it's really such an honor to be here, and I want to thank the foundation for inviting me. And I really want to thank all of you. From what I've heard from your introductions, you all are really on the edge of the leading edge of the movement for a better food system. And it's men and women like you who share the conviction that there are environmentally, socially, and economically sustainable ways that we can put in place right now, not 50 years from now, to build a food system that makes hunger, obesity, and poverty part of the world's past, not its future. And that's really what Food Tank is all about. We have really a two-pronged mission. First, it's to carry out the research into policies and practices necessary to grow a sustainable food system. And the second is really to use that research to help people like you put those policies and practices into place. And since we started about a year and a half ago, we have more than 100,000 advocates in the United States and all over the world who have become a part of the Food Tank Network and share our convictions for building this system. And that's part of the reason that even when I'm sick, I travel to places like this, because I know there are people like you who want to join those advocates and really be a part of that movement, which you're already doing. So, as was said earlier, I've had this tremendous honor to travel to more than 35 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, Latin America, and really all over the world. I've met with hundreds of farmers, women's groups, youth groups, students, academics, researchers, policymakers, and scientists, and really listen to what they think it's going to take to build a better food system. And that gave me such a unique opportunity to really hear firsthand what they're doing in their own countries to help alleviate hunger and poverty and really find ways to protect the environment. And one farmer I spoke with in Kenya put it to me best. He told me that he's been innovating all along, just as his father and his grandfather used to do, and that it's that innovative capacity that's really evident, not just in sub-Saharan Africa, but all over the developing world, and also right here in California. So, in Ethiopia, which I know one of the fellows is from, I met with farmers who started low-cost rainwater harvesting and erosion control practices that are both raising incomes and increasing yields. In India, I met with women entrepreneurs who are providing low-cost food to the urban poor and using innovative marketing strategies to attract new customers. In the Gambia, I met with fisher folk who are finding ways to protect marine resources and preserve fish harvests and also prevent food waste. And earlier this week, I was in Quebec City, and I encountered farmers from all over North America who had gathered to really push and encourage for more investment in smallholder agriculture and let policymakers know, as being pointed out in the film, that farmers are not just food producers. They're businesswomen and they're businessmen. They're inventors and innovators. They're teachers who share the practices that they're developing. And they're stewards of the land who really deserve to be recognized for the ecosystem services they provide that benefit us all. And there are countless others, I can go on and on, who really showed me what the components of a new, sustainable global food system can look like. And, again, after spending so much time on the ground, I'm convinced that the way things are isn't the way that they have to be. I'm convinced that we can build a food system that combats poverty and alleviates hunger, not by treating farmers and the natural environment as obstacles to growth, but by realizing that they're preconditions for it. A food system where science is our servant, not our master, and where it's understood that costly, complicated technologies aren't always the most appropriate technologies. And a food system that honors our values, where women and men and workers and consumers all have a seat at the table, and none are left on the outside looking in. And so, as you all know, we have a real opportunity to build that kind of system, but we don't have much time. There's no time to waste here. So tonight, what I want to discuss and hear from all of you is three strategies that I think will work, and you'll tell me if I'm wrong, to create that kind of food system done both here in California and around the world. And the first is what that video highlighted, supporting family farmers and food workers around the world. Second is the idea of reintroducing indigenous and traditional crops back into our diets. And the third is making urban areas centers of food production. So the first, standing with family farmers and food workers. 2014 has been designated by the United Nations as the International Year of Family Farming. And it's been described as a celebration, and it is. It was the first, there are these international years every year. And this is the first international year that was designated because of support from civil society, NGOs like the one in this room, family farmers from all over the world. They really pushed for the United Nations to have this year to celebrate family farmers. But as you all know, when you travel through California or the Midwest, where I'm from, it's very easy to think that most of the farms in the world are factories and fields because they're so big. But when we think about farms across the world, most of them are small. There are 500 million family farmers who together contribute to the livelihoods of around 2 billion people. And again, these are not big farms. I'm always surprised when I'm meeting with researchers or policymakers or even nonprofit groups about how few of them really realize how small most of the farms in the world are. Most are around 2 hectares or 5 acres of land. And what surprises me even more is that these folks don't realize that small farms are becoming more popular and not less, and that they're not only growing food, but they're also creating a lot of things on their farms, including fostering equality. And I'll give you one example. In Ghana, I met with a group of women farmers who, by the time I got to their village, they were mad at me because I was 4 hours late, the roads, and they were mad. But once I started interviewing them, they warmed up a little bit. And they have done this extraordinary thing. They've organized themselves into a cooperative to raise dairy cows, to make yogurt, to sell to local schools. And they explained to me that at first their husbands were really angry that they had dared to create this cooperative sort of behind their backs. And what happened is the more that the men saw their family incomes grow, the more they saw that their children had better clothes and access to school books and healthcare, their resentment sort of turned into respect. And this isn't just happening in Africa. In India, I met with the Self-Employed Women's Association, which has over 1 million members. It's one of the biggest, I think it is the biggest labor union in the world. And one of their priorities is training women farmers how to use agroecological practices, vermiculture, composting, rainwater harvesting, a whole range of things. And one of the things that they're doing, and I'll talk more about this later, is growing traditional crops. And then what the Self-Employed Women's Association does is help these farmers, they train them how to market their spices, organic spices, lentils, and other products to low-income urban residents. And the outcome of this is that the women in the Self-Employed Women's Association are getting higher incomes, and these consumers who before were only getting low-quality food now have access to this higher quality food. And both sides are really winning from this. And as you all know, there are countless examples here in California of how farmers and ranchers and others are really working to protect the environment and improve their incomes. I think, especially in the United States, we blame farmers for a lot of the environmental problems we've seen, but there are so many great examples, whether it's John Jevons and Grow Biointensive here in California, working to show that you can grow food in places you could never have imagined and do it in a sustainable way. Many of the organizations that are working here tonight obviously are working on more environmentally and socially just food production. And California has been at the forefront since the 1960s and 70s of linking chefs and farmers and really pushing for locally produced and sustainable food. One other thing that we need to make sure that we keep having farmers. The average age of farmers in the United States, according to the latest agricultural census, is 58.3 years old. In Africa, it's around 57 years old. So we have this aging population of farmers, and we need to find ways to cultivate the next generation. Policymakers, academics, NGOs really need to invest in the policies and practices that will make agriculture both economically profitable and intellectually stimulating, so that people stay in agriculture because they want to, not because they feel forced to. And here in California and really across the United States, we need to find ways to train young farmers and make sure that they have access to land. The National Young Farmers Coalition and the National Farmers Union work with young farmers to help them get access to training. They need to do their jobs better. But the real issue is that for farms and farmers to be economically and environmentally sustainable, they need to be able to own their land or at least have long-term leases so that they can invest in improvements and feel, connected to the land in a bigger way. And then, just to transition, as I mentioned at the onset, we also need to stand with not just farmers, but all the farm laborers and food workers throughout the world. The plight of family farmers really goes hand in hand with other workers across the food chain. And we need better labor and wage policies that protect all of those who really work hard to get food on our tables. These are people who are not only growing food and harvesting it, but slaughtering, processing, transporting, preparing, and serving the food that we all eat each day. Last week in the United States, we celebrated Cesar Chavez Day, and he really spent his entire career to improve the lives of farm workers, helping them get fair wages and better working conditions. And today, his legacy lives on in a number of campaigns for social justice, equality, fair wages, and safe food for all. One great organization that Chavez really helped foster is the Farm Labor Organizing Committee, and they've built a membership of thousands of migrant farm workers across California and across the country. And they are really built this united voice in the quest for food justice. Their successes include increasing wages and improving working conditions for tobacco workers and also pickle harvesters all up in the Northeast. They've also inspired the coalition of Immobility workers who have been a leader in worker-based human rights, the growing movement to end human trafficking, as was mentioned before, labor abuses, and again, modern-day slavery in agriculture. And their work has led to groundbreaking changes, including convincing Walmart to join their Fair Food campaign earlier this year. Restaurant workers also face challenges. The average minimum wage for tipped employees in the United States is $2.13 per hour. And the organization Restaurant Opportunity Center United has they're a group that organized right after 9/11 to really build a voice for restaurant workers through organizing workplace justice campaigns, creating partnerships with restaurants so they know how to treat their workers better, and improving industry-wide standards. And in addition to that, fast food workers are some of the lowest paid workers in the food system. The campaign Low Pay Is Not Okay is helping workers at McDonald's and other fast food chains fight for a living wage. And in 2013, they organized a petition campaign to raise the minimum wage to $15 per hour. And other campaigns, such as the Fight for 15, are really pushing for the same thing. So the point, at least for me, is that it's clear that it's really no longer acceptable for the food movement and the labor movement to be acting separately. And that we all of us in this room, really need to be invested in not only eating good, nutritious, and sustainable food, but also caring about the workers who give it to us each day. So the second strategy I just want to talk about, and something that I've seen working on the ground that I think can be useful here in California, is growing indigenous and forgotten crops. As you all know much better than me, California's drought has had a devastating impact on farmers and eaters alike. California's water system supplies water to more than 30 million people and 2.3 million hectares of irrigated agricultural land. Worldwide, agriculture accounts for about 70% of all freshwater use, and the recent report that came out in March from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has found that many areas of the world, including California, are likely to have more frequent droughts. So the drought that's occurring here has already cost the state millions of dollars and will force, unfortunately, many farmers out of business and raise prices for consumers all over the country. But there's a positive side to this drought, and it's something that I also encountered when the drought in the Midwest occurred in 2012. And it's that farmers and eaters are rethinking what they grow and eat. And we have a chance to learn from what farmers in other parts of the world have really done to cope with climate change and create resilience on their farms. And one thing we can do is start growing crops that are drought resistant, more than the number of people who are hungry right now. And the impact of the growth in obesity has, we've seen a surge in cardiovascular disease, respiratory diseases, and type 2 diabetes. And these sorts of diseases, these non-communicable diseases, will cost the world roughly $30 trillion globally between now and 2030. And it's that point that brings me to the final point I want to make tonight. The need for cultivating these indigenous, nutritious crops is not just needed in rural areas. We also need this production to be happening in cities around the world. Urbanization rates are expected to increase 70% by 2050. And if we're going to feed those families, we'll need to make cities and towns into centers of food production. Worldwide, urban farmers are now having the greatest impact in communities where hunger and poverty are most acute. I had the opportunity to visit Kibera, which is located in Nairobi. It's the largest slum, or believed to be the largest slum in sub-Saharan Africa, with nearly 1 million people. And in Kibera, urban farmers have done something really innovative. They've developed what they call vertical gardens. And essentially, these are tall, empty rice or maize sacks that probably come up to my waist. And they fill them with soil, and they grow food on different levels. They poke holes into the bags. They can grow food on the top, and they can grow food on the sides. They grow things like kale and spinach or tomatoes. And they sell some of what they grow, and they also consume part of what they grow. And while these might sound sort of like cute little, backyard gardens, the value of them can't be underestimated. In 2007 and 2008, when riots occurred in Nairobi, no food was coming into the city, and certainly none was coming into Kibera. But the farmers and their neighbors who had these vertical gardens, had their own sort of steady source of food, and they didn't go as hungry as some of the folks in other parts of the city. And the role that Kibera farmers have played in urban food production is really a precursor of things to come. In much of the developing world, food purchases can cost consumers as much as 80% of their total incomes. And in countries where war and instability can cause the cost of food to skyrocket overnight, urban agriculture will be fundamental to helping prevent riots and wide-scale urban hunger. So from my perspective, it's not just that urban agriculture is morally right or environmentally smart, but it's also really necessary for regional stability. The Arab Spring and the conflict in Syria haven't, just come out of nowhere. They are perpetuated by drought, high food prices, especially in cities, and urban youth who are really, angry and hungry at the same time, or hangry. And I think if, we're interested in international security and preventing conflict, investing in urban agriculture in cities will just be necessary. We won't have a choice. And it's not just growing food on empty lots or rooftops that will be I know is something that the foundation is very, very interested in. And these food forests are designed in such a way, using the principles of permaculture to not only provide fruits and nuts and a whole range of other products, but also create greenery and shade for cities and provide places for people to congregate and come together. The No-Yo Food Forest, am I pronouncing that right, near Fort Bragg here in California, they use the food forest to train local gardeners. They offer workshops. They're training that next generation of farmers. In Seattle, the Beacon Food Forest was started in 2009, and its goal is to design, plant, and grow an urban forest that is conducive to the health of local ecosystems. Trees and plants and shrubs are chosen there that support each other's growth, and it's again a place for the community to come together. And these food forests are all over the world, and in Vietnam and Sri Lanka, food forests that are hundreds of years old are helping reforest areas, establish or reestablish endangered species, and provide medicinal plants that have long been forgotten by some of these communities. And they're also helping sequester carbon in soils by providing that greenery. And I really think that all of these examples that I've talked about tonight really highlight the ability of sustainable agriculture to create a more robust, resilient food system. A food system that doesn't contribute to climate change, but that can help mitigate it. A system that's not only resistant to food price shocks, trade wars, and conflicts, but can also help prevent them. And against that backdrop, sustainable agriculture isn't an option, it's a necessity. And I know I showered you with a lot of numbers tonight, but I'll share a few more with you. As I said before, agriculture accounts for 70% of freshwater use. It's leading to 80% of deforestation around the globe, and it's contributing an estimated 25 to 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions. It's the human endeavor most impacted by higher temperatures, flooding, extreme weather events, and other impacts of climate change. And so it's really no exaggeration to say that today's food system is kind of like the Titanic. It's immense, it's complex, it's a marvel of engineering, it's thought to be invincible, but it's also racing to its destruction. And the difference is that all of us in this room, unlike the captain and crew of the Titanic, know what's coming. And we can change course. But again, we really need to do this fast, because the amazing thing about growing food in a sustainable way is that it can help mitigate climate change, while at the very same time strengthen food security in developing and industrialized countries alike. I saw it in Kenya, where I met with farmers who are working with the World Agroforestry Center to grow nitrogen-fixing trees that provide a natural source of fertilizer for their crops. So that eliminates the need for them to buy expensive fertilizer out of a bag. And using those methods have increased production by up to 300%. I saw it in Indonesia, where organic farmers are producing 60,000 tons of rice by using organic methods, and they're slashing their production costs by 40%. I saw it in Rwanda, where farmers working with Heifer International created the necessary infrastructure to support milk production and distribution. Farmers cooperatives in Rwanda now have access to cooling centers for dairy products, allowing them to sell to markets that they would have never had access to before. And I saw it in Niger, where women farmers are using solar drip irrigation to get water efficiently to crops in the drought-stricken country. They've established a market garden to grow vegetables, fruit trees, and other crops for sale in the capital of Niger. And when you ask these women, how their lives have changed since they started the garden, they say things like, "I can buy better clothes now. I bought my husband a bicycle, so it's easier for him to get to work, and I'm fatter now." And so before these women started working together, they were making less than $1 a day. They were making around $300 per year. Today they're making about $1,500 per year. So the impact of these innovations can be very startling and amazing and really life-changing. You know, again, I can go on and on, but I think you all get the picture. Growing indigenous and traditional crops and using some of these other practices can improve nutrition and incomes, while also giving farmers a sense of insurance against crop failure and disease. And I should add that these are practices that can be adapted, replicated, scaled up, not just in low-income countries, but also here in the United States. And they can improve water availability, increase crop diversity, improve soil quality, and as I've said, and I think it's important to drive it home again, they can help mitigate climate change. So how do we promote sustainable agriculture? And it's not a difficult recipe. We already know the ingredients. We need governments and NGOs to invest in the research and technical support that's needed. We need to introduce more nutritious diets back into our societies. We need to foster the use of environmentally friendly practices and appropriate technologies. And we need to provide better training and management skills. But those things are really only part of the equation. We also need to stand with the women and men who understand, as I think all of us do, that sustainable agriculture can generate wealth, but it takes democratic institutions to make that happen and to really guarantee shared prosperity. From Africa to Latin America to Asia, I've had the opportunity and really tremendous honor to meet with literally hundreds of men and women who today are, again, on the leading edge of the movement for the greatest transformation of agriculture in our time. They're not scientists. Most have never even finished school. They're not only separated by geography, but by faith and tradition that go back long before any of us were born. But they share a common vision, a vision of a world where no one's future is determined in corporate boardrooms 500 miles away, or 5,000 miles away, a vision of communities where everyone understands that you don't need to destroy the environment to feed your family, a vision of a food system that's built to last, and an economy that leaves no one behind, and a vision grounded in the conviction that the way things are right now isn't the way they have to be. So what I want us all to do is, really let them know that that's our vision too. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to hearing your questions and what's going on in your own work and your own community. So thank you again.